Dimension W, Episode 7, The Voice Calling from the Past. Now, for me, this is kind of where it all began because I screwed up and I ended up watching this episode before watching any other episode. And at the time, because the newest episode, Episode 8, came out, I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago, but at the time I watched it, it was the newest episode, which is kind of crazy. But I'm kind of going to do something a little different because I'm going to go through my initial thoughts of it and then my second viewing, because I did watch it again to go through and catch some of the other stuff, which was really good because I came up with some other random theories about what may or may not happen in the future. And there's some other theories that I got from someone else, Jade Stewart, who commented on my episode 5 review about some things that might happen in the future and some stuff about like Loser and his son and stuff like that. But when I first saw this episode, as my introduction to the series, honestly, the first 10 seconds made me know that I was going to like this anime because they had the scene, and it was honestly the part where Kyoma was like, oh, I barely got to drink it, and he picked up the can and threw it across the street into a recycle bin, and I was just like, I went back to check. I was like, not counting the Funimation logo and everything, how much time was that? And I was like, 10 seconds long. And I was like, I'm going to like this anime. So that was my introduction to that right there. And I really thought this was just a crazy hardcore first episode. I was like, man, they went through a very emotional backstory. They talked about, a little bit about what Dimension W is. They introduced a ton of characters. And one thing that really helped me think this was the first episode was the Prince doing his freaking invitation thing and introducing all those new characters. That was like the big moment where I was like, okay, definitely the first episode because they're showing who all these characters are. And that was like the biggest thing that made me think this was the first episode. It was just like, oh, all these characters know each other, but we get like an emotional backstory for our main character right off the top. One of our other main characters, who is Mira, we don't get too much information on outside of she's a robot. And then we get introduced to all the different collectors and the Prince. I didn't know who he was really, but they talk about him a little. And we saw Steve Jobs in there, which for anyone who watched my episode 1 review, that was like the only thing I had to say, like, Steve Jobs is in this because I wanted people to know what I was talking about. So if you watch from there, you know what I'm talking about. And it was interesting. And I knew Claire was in the scene with the whole crazy round table type deal that they did. And I knew she was important because it stopped on her, and that's like a visual thing. She was closest to, not the camera, but she was closest drawn. And so I was like, I know she's important, but I don't know who she is, and I didn't really know who the other characters were and stuff. But basically, I got my introduction to Albert and Kyoma and his sister-in-law and his fiance at the time when she passed away. And we got a little bit on Mira and Mary when they showed up and stuff. And I just thought, crazy first episode. And the weird thing about it is that if you can, I know it's a little hard to do this, but if you single out this episode as your first experience and you kind of just look at it, it could easily be a first episode because with, honestly, the other 6 episodes, it's not like they give that much information. The Dimension W thing was basically the exact same amount of information we got out of every other episode, because when I watched the first one, I was like, oh, I didn't really learn anything else. All he said was limitless potential, and that was pretty much what got added in this episode, and it was slightly different from the other ones, and I was like, that wasn't that much different. They did the whole introduction thing for all the different collectors who are clearly going to be like big important players throughout the rest of this season. So that's a huge element that I caught as it was being introduced. So I didn't feel like I was missing anything. Crazy introduction to a character where it just shows how emotional he is, how his life is very different. Just made sense. I thought it was a little weird that it started that way and then it kind of cut to the future, and I didn't feel that lost, and I don't know if that's a testament to how well they wrote the episode or a testament to how singular this episode is when you really think about it. If you look at everything objectively, there are only like maybe 6 elements that are really that important. Like, you don't really need to know the Prince, so maybe there's only 2 elements, honestly, that are that crucial, because didn't really need to know who the Prince was, didn't really need to know who Claire was, because neither of them have really done anything yet. It was clear the Prince was the one starting all of it up, so that's all you need. You don't need the specifics. Mira was like the one element where I wasn't sure, and I learned the whole crying thing. I learned from the ending of the episode because she's crying in the outro. So that was really it. It was like learning who Mira was a weird, like a little mystery to me. I knew who Albert was because he was on the team with Kyoma. I knew like Kyoma's past and like his trauma, and that's kind of how the episode went. And then it went into them going to the island. So oddly enough, it would make a good first episode. It might seem a little jumbled, but I thought it was just one of those types of anime where the characters know each other and it's just picking up like right in the action. But going through it a second time, I picked up a couple things that were definitely important. One thing, and I kind of got this from the comments, is that maybe the Steve Jobs character was the one that kind of put out the order on Urizaki's family and killed Mrs. Urizaki and their daughter. Another thing, of course, is the fact that Claire is in this sort of round circle type of deal. She was, I want to say, number 46 or 47. I don't know what importance that has whatsoever, but that was her number. That was her placing. And then we have the prince who's kind of doing things his own way to kind of push things along. So that I picked up. A really big theory that came out of this episode after my second viewing is that I'm kind of convinced now that Mira may or may not at least have some part of the girl's brain in herself. Like, I don't know if they did it digitally or her brain's just partly in there or something. Because the way they did it, when they did it, I believe it was the last episode, they like kind of show her brain a little in like a 3D scope. It looks like a normal brain. It just has like lines going through it and stuff like that. So I don't know if she partly has her brain in her or what the deal is, but when Kyoma went and it was like his fiance's head was missing, when I first saw it, I was just like, crap, she died. I assumed she blew up, but it didn't occur to me that it was like a straight line, like someone chopped her head off. So it didn't occur to me how smooth it looked, and I'm like, if it was that big of an issue, I mean, we don't see her body, so maybe that was the issue, I don't know, but she says, like, we lost her head due to a complication. That kind of sounds like her head exploded or something, but it's just like a clean cut, and I'm just like, that seems so suspicious to me. And the fact that Mrs. Urizaki was completely messed up for seemingly no reason, she's got like patches, she's got bandages and stuff, and her arm's broken. That seems like the result of an explosion to me, being too close to an explosion. And I mean, it is coil, so it could have been the fact that it was like in her head, like dimensions opened up and it just took her head and they kind of yanked the body away, maybe. But once I saw that the second time, I was like, I feel like Mira might have part of her brain, and I wish I could remember her name. I want to say it's like Miyubaki or something like that. It's very similar, I know, but I'm not 100% sure. But that was the theory I came up with that's probably totally wrong, and I hope it is, because that kind of makes Mrs. Urizaki, who has already been killed, it kind of makes her a bit of a villain character, and I would hope that that's not the case. And, it would be even worse if they flat out killed her and took her head. That would make it worse. But even just taking her head in general, if they lied about it being, like, a complication that, like, maybe destroyed her face or something, even lying about that is really, really bad because that's so disgraceful to someone who actually died. But if they actually legitimately killed her, then of course that makes them way worse. But I feel like whatever happened there, they send the people, they at some point kill Mrs. Urizaki, and that was right when Mira was waking up. And I don't know if they used Mira, and that's how they made like the robot guard for the prince, because they seem very similar. He has an actual personality. And that's why I feel like they may have used some of the girl's brain to give them, seemingly humanistic personalities. Because we've only seen one other robot, and that was number 4. And 4 doesn't seem to really have any sort of personality. And Kyoma's mentioned, like, don't be too expressive when they were, like, in the hotel on the Lake Yasugami thing. It was like, don't be too expressive, basically, because you'll be outed as this weird, extra, different type of robot. So, and they haven't really done a great job showing different types of robots, so I'm not sure where Mira and the boy kind of range. I'm just assuming, based on some of the dialogue, that they are way too expressive to be robots. So, I don't know, I feel like they may have taken, if they took her head, they may have used like a piece of her brain to make Mira kind of humanistic, and then once they killed the family off, I'm guessing they took Mira, and then Mr. Urizaki was able to take her back after he kind of went on the run from them because he knew they were going to try to kill him too. But maybe whatever was left of the brain they used to make the prince's robot guard. So I don't know. That could be a possibility. I really do hope not, like I said, because that's just really messed up. But for science, I don't know. That might be their real justification, and I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I would assume that the family's actually dead because I doubt his wife would take off for no good reason and fake a murder and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure they had flashbacks where he came home. So, pretty sure that's not the case. But that was a theory I'd come up with. Another theory that I wanted to talk about was mentioned in my episode 5 review is that maybe if someone gets enough of the numbers, they can make their own dimension and live in like their perfect version of life, which I think is a very cool theory, and it wouldn't seem too crazy to me. I mean, so far we haven't seen anyone really control it, but at this point, pretty much everything's still kind of a mystery anyway. We don't know who has what sort of control, if there is any whatsoever, but that I thought was a really cool theory. I'd love to see if that's a somewhat possibility. And we do have this weird sort of ghost thing happening again where people may or may not be alive still on this island. And that's very interesting. So I don't really know what the case is there. And also, something that's fairly interesting. I assume this took place way after the war, but we technically don't know when Mira was made. And I believe they've kind of given a range where it's been a couple of years, and that would be about the same time as when the battle actually happened. So if she was created like as that battle was going on and the family was killed off and stuff, we might see Mrs. Yurizaki show up again. We got a little bit of a reference to Yurizaki from the Prince, and we don't really know if he was talking about Mrs. Yurizaki or Mr. Yurizaki, but he just says doctor. And it was about this nothingness sphere sort of thing that seemingly has consciousness because it kills those two guards, but it stops at like the commander who's been introduced in this episode, and it kind of goes up seemingly straight to him, and we still don't really know what happens there. I know the latest episode is out now, but we don't really know what happened in that case. So looking forward to getting to learn that. I like the new commander character. I like her design. And I don't know who it is she reminds me of. I think it's this woman from Blue Exorcist, because she has blonde hair, and I believe she has like one little red like strip. But it's either she reminds me of her, or I've seen her picture like before the anime was done, and it was maybe like a promo thing. But either that's her, or she looks exactly like someone else I've seen in another anime with the armor and everything. And it kind of reminds me of like Distill when they first showed her, kind of reminds me of another manga that I can't think of the name of, but the movie Edge of Tomorrow is based off of that manga, and it's the war manga where time keeps restarting, and it's kind of a similar little pose. It's just a person honestly standing still, but they're in like armor and stuff. But she reminds me of someone, and I just can't think of who it is. I believe it's the woman from Blue Exorcist, but I don't know. Like, when I saw her, I was like, she reminds me. Even when I first saw it, I was like, she looks exactly like some other anime character, but I cannot place it. So maybe it's just in my head, or maybe I really did just see a promo of this a long time ago before they actually released the anime or something. I don't know, but it was so familiar when I first saw her. Maybe it's something from Evangelion, but no one has like blonde hair in that I can think of. So I don't know, unless it reminds me of like the main girl, but she has like blue hair. But I don't know. I don't know what it is, but something about her is insanely familiar to me. But I enjoyed this episode for sure. We got to meet all the different collectors and stuff like that, which I thought was pretty cool. That was another big aspect of why I thought this was the first episode I mentioned, with the introductions and stuff like that. But I don't know. I enjoyed them. The different personalities seem interesting. Of course, we have Loser. Another thing that theory is that with his son, that may be his son just dressing as a woman in disguise. And when I read that, which is from the same person, I thought it made perfect sense because they've been doing all these missions for a long time, and he built this reputation as a crappy art thief, and then they finally got busted by Mira, so it was like, okay, you have to actually need a disguise now. So they go from, I have a son to now I have a daughter, so no one knows who this young girl is because technically she doesn't exist. And I think the whole black hair thing from the last episode is because the boy wasn't dressing up as a girl, as the collector version of the girl. So I don't know if it's like a prosthetic thing. Like, that's what I was wondering now, is if it's a digital thing or if it's like full on prosthetics where he's covered up. Like, the wig stuff seems simple, and I guess technically you could just stuff a fake bra, which I guess that makes sense too. So that could easily be the case. But he also looked different as the girl, because when I thought it was a totally separate character, I thought she looked taller than the boy did when I first saw him. So I don't know exactly what's going on there, if it is just a disguise or something like that. And it could technically be heels, because that makes you a little bit taller. But I noticed a couple of things that just look a bit different. So I guess that's the theory, and that kind of makes sense that his son would have to go into a disguise, because of course he knew that he'd be going up against Kyoma again, and it just makes perfect sense to have a new disguise for your son, because we're looking for numbers. He told him, like, go look for numbers if you're interested, and he knew what was going to happen there. So it's like, all right, I'm going to have to get my son to look different because we're going to run up against him again. So he's involved, and I mentioned before, I'm pretty sure he's going to be the nemesis, and I think this whole island thing is going to be like a cool, crazy, like, boss fight type thing for Kyoma, where he's going to have to take all of these people out because they won't end up fighting each other. Maybe one or two will, but I think Kyoma's going to have to take most of them down, and maybe Loser will have to take some down too. But looking forward to that. I mentioned I like their personalities. The funniest thing was the American guys, because they show the first guy, and he's the most generic, like, typical version of an American person that they could have put in an anime, and he's just the buff white guy with blonde hair and blue eyes with women all over him. And I was like, that, of course that's what they did. And then they show the second person, and it's actually a black guy from America. So I was like, okay, at least there's a black guy in it. That was kind of cool. And he's straight out of the Matrix. He's freaking Morpheus. So we have our super generic dude, who also was a full-on, in, like, dressed like Thor, basically, because they have the scene where they're talking about what's going on with the coils and things starting to mess up and stuff. And we see him in a cape, and then he turns and he has, like, gauntlets, and he's dressed up like Thor / Superman. I'm like, why does he look like that? I guess that's where his coils are. He wanted to be a superhero. I don't know. But I just thought that was really funny. I was like, this is the most, like, generic thing they could possibly do with this guy. But I enjoyed it. It was still really funny to see that. But I'm looking forward to seeing these characters fight, because they all have skills. They're, the prince says it himself, like, the fact that you even understood where to go, which basically all it said was, we're going to the island. But I guess they knew where to show up because they have the stamp, right on the thing. But it's like, basically the fact that you all showed up means you're the cream of the crop. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what these people can do, because we don't really see any weapons. One of the guys who's like a German dude, or I think he was Russian actually, they mentioned he, like, destroyed Central 3, which I don't know what that means, honestly, because they say, like, this is Central 60 and this is Central that, but I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means, like, a whole city or just, like, a small section, like a part within a city or what. But he destroyed something, and that said a lot. He destroyed a central number, and that says a lot to me. So I don't know if the central numbers are the actual towers, or, like I said, city, or what that is, but he destroyed one, so that stood out to me. Everyone else, they just kind of show, like, this is the top collector in America, number 2 collector, mystery collector with Loser and his daughter, or Loser and his son, which that's going to really confuse me because I'm going to be so used to saying daughter after that. But I like their introduction. I would definitely want to see what they can and can't do. Looking forward to seeing Kyoma kind of get some answers, because I want some answers for sure. I also see him driving his new car, which I mentioned before. He had 2 cars because I saw this episode first, and that's the one he's working on in the first episode, which I thought I was wrong about, and I thought I spoiled something. But then I was like, okay, no, he definitely was working on that car, because it's a white car and his other one is, like, silver. So I was glad I didn't spoil that in the first episode, even though it's not that big of a deal. It's like, oh, it's another car. But it's a really sweet freaking car. And also, something I noticed is that the steering wheel is on the other side. So it's like an American car where the steering wheel is on the left side. But his other car, the steering wheel is on the right side, because Mira gets in on the left and she's waiting for him. And when he drives up, he's on the left as well. So I thought that was like a random thing, but you typically don't see that in anime a lot, where characters drive cars that are on the other side. I know only one other anime has that, and I don't know if they have it currently, so it's not even a spoiler, but it's Bakuman, so it depends on what season they're in, if that's even finished or not. But that was, like, very, very end. And that was through the manga. That's why I know that. So I don't know where the anime is, but that was in the manga. They had that the very end. They had like an American style car, so it was really cool, and it fit into the story. It was very beautiful, actually. But I really enjoyed this episode. Definitely looking forward to the next one. Can't wait to watch that one later tonight. But of course, want to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and I want to know what you guys think about this weird living sphere thing that seems to be the nothingness, because death basically is what Lucian said. Like, if it's nothingness, everything would be dead. Everyone's affected by that, and basically you just die. And we saw that play out with the two guys in the front, and we don't know what happened. The ship crashes. It's right in front of the prince, and he's got like a little bit of sweat coming down, so we don't really know what happened there. But I wanted to know your guesses as to what that is, if it's a person, and that's kind of one of the other things where it might be Yurizaki, because I don't know. Who knows if she was there? She could have been. Or just anyone. It could have been anyone. Who knows how many people were on the island. It was a facility, so it could be any number of people, but someone's going to be important. I feel like it has to be. Someone's going to be physical at some point, and it'll either be... It would be weird if it was the male doctor, because he just died, in the city. So that would be really crazy, but it's going to be somebody. It has to be, I would assume. But I want to know your theories about that, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.